Hello everybody, my name is Staff Sergeant Hurst with the Air National Guard, and today we will be doing a leadership experiences talk over motivational behavior. Today I have a guest speaker with me, Lieutenant Colonel Duffy. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing quite well. Thank you for asking me here.
I appreciate your efforts for coming in, sir, and helping out our airmen and our soldiers.
Absolutely.
Roger that. So today we're going to be talking about motivational behavior. The first thing I do with my talks is I first look over a definition, but the Air Force does not have a pure definition for this, so we're going to bounce back to the leadership definition and how that applies to motivational behavior. So, leadership definition is the art and science of influencing and directing people to accomplish the assigned mission. So, in your words, sir, how does that tie into motivational behavior, and what does that have to do with leadership?
Well, it has pretty much everything to do with leadership because as one of our former generals and became a president of the United States, Eisenhower, is supposed to have said, is that the art of leadership is getting people to do what needs to be done because people want to do it. Or I'm paraphrasing somewhat. But this is important concept for leadership, is that everyone's going to do things a little bit differently, and as long as it's contributing to the overall goal, then you have success. So your job as a leader is to try to figure out what motivates people to give their best and to succeed towards the mission.
Roger that. And that's the big thing, is that motivation right there. And I think when we're talking about behavior on top of that, it's influencing and all those other concepts. Something that we did talk about previously before that was Maslow's Hierarchy, which is somewhat of a system of understanding and applying those. Could you please expand on that?
Well, Maslow's hierarchy is a fairly basic concept where you're looking at, you need to take care of the basic needs such as food and housing and sleep. If those things aren't taken care of, none of the rest of it matters. So you have to take care of those things first. And that's what our tag's talking about in his priorities. In fact, I've got a card here. He talks about first in his priority list is care of all our airmen and soldiers. And so if we don't take care of that first layer, then we haven't put ourselves in a position where people can be successful. So the next layer after that is where people are actually able to take a look at the ability of them to succeed in their different levels. So the next layer is actually community. And this is where we're talking about diversity and inclusion and feeling like you're belonging and making sure that as an individual that you feel that you're in a place where you can contribute significantly to the organizational goals that have been laid out for all of us. So that's the important part. And of course this all ties in very closely with readiness, because if people are not taken care of at home, their families are not taken care of, and we talk about this frequently when people are overseas, if they're concerned about their folks at home and we're not taking care of those folks, then they're not going to be doing their job as efficiently and expertly as they possibly can in the field, which is what we need them to do. Right. So it's care and community and diversity and inclusion. All these things are combining together. All that provides for force readiness. But what we really want to talk about with some of the concepts we're going to talk about today is getting to that level of self-actualization, which is the very peak of Maslow's hierarchy, where you actually feel like you are being successful and where you are carrying out the directions and orders of our superiors for the missions at hand.
Roger that. And that's where buy-in and that concept of wanting to be there actually makes a big impact, correct?
Absolutely.
Roger that. That's a huge thing, and I think a lot of soldiers, airmen, it doesn't matter what branch service you're really in, if you believe in the mission, you believe in what you're doing, and the overall cause of it, I've always seen a drastic change compared to, let's say, some of the online training we do. You see a difference in that compared to field training over job expertise or getting a badge to be an expert in a specific area. And those concepts really play a good role into it. So for the hierarchy, in a nutshell, what it's really talking about is first taking care of your said troops and then focusing on that mission after to really see that your soldiers are going to do that because now they see you're being taken care of them.
Correct. And at each level in that, there are different type of motivators. As you might imagine, hunger is a very strong motivator at the very bottom levels, but it may not be in the direction we need people to go in, and typically isn't. We need people that are actually contributing to the mission at a level of self-actualization, that they are doing this because this is what they want to do.
Roger. Okay, roger that, sir. So then that brings us to our next thing is what's motivating people and how do we motivate people? In your personal experience, what have you used for that, and how do you recognize how to motivate a specific individual, because we all know every individual is unique, right? So how do we target individuals? Because individual motivation is very unique, and it's a skill set, really, practice and experience.
Certainly. And there are traditional motivators. And some of the traditional motivators are actually being very directive, being very authoritarian, and taking a direct action at people, or even yelling or screaming at people. And while that may work when you're actually standing there, as soon as you leave as a leader, people are going to go back and do what they were going to do anyway, unless it's something that you have intrinsically motivated them to do. And that's the difference, is intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. And yelling at people and demanding that people to do certain things in a certain way, and that it is only your way, and that's the only way to get the job accomplished, that's extrinsic motivation. But when we really are successful in our organizations, both civilian and in the military, is when individuals own their self-actualization and own their own contribution to the goals. It's commander's intent. What the intent of a long-range goal is, but how you get to that may have many different methods. And one method may be better today and for a certain person, and another method may be better for a different day and a different person. And so we got to change it up and make sure that we are providing people with the ability to contribute in their way. And that goes back to the TAG's priorities of diversity and inclusion, because those diverse ideas, and if we include those diverse ideas into how we work in our day-to-day jobs, we will be much more successful, because we will find more opportunities for better ways of doing things.
Okay, roger that. So then we'll pull it back just a little bit and we talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I know in some of my psychology classes and things like that, we've talked about those things before. Essentially, what is the big difference between extrinsic and intrinsic, so people can really understand how to use those properly?
It really is fancy words for saying inside and outside. So what comes from within is intrinsic, and extrinsic is what comes from without. So things like money, job positions, and being yelled at, all those things are extrinsic motivators, and they are motivators, but all of those can be demotivators as well in the long term, and that's what's really important for extrinsic motivators. They can frequently be demotivators in the long term. And we want to develop in our airmen and soldiers is intrinsic motivation, because that motivation is what continues to occur after the leader leaves the room.
Roger that. Okay, so one thing I've always thought about when I thought about intrinsic, especially in the mindset of leadership, is inspiration. And it just helps me remember I and I, but it also is it's a true thing there. I've had leaders before that truly motivate me and inspire me, kind of level me up because of how they treat me or how they respond to me or how they take my ideas into consideration. And we've all had leaders before that it was pure power and authority, and the level of effectiveness is just not the same.
Absolutely correct. And so that's where we get into the idea that you need to tailor yourself as a leader to your individuals. This is the dynamicism of dynamic leadership, is actually looking to find out what's in it for them. Why would they want to? Why would they care? And if we can't figure that out, then we are not truly leading our people. Because it is far easier to fall back on being very directive, being very authoritarian, telling people exactly what you want them to do and exactly how to do it. And they'll do it as long as you're standing over them or going to show up the next day and yell at them again. They will do it. But the long term is, as a leader, is to create an organization that you can step out of and not be a part of. And it still is successful and continues to grow because of your contribution to it.
Roger that. Okay, so essentially one of the big checking points, a check on learning for a leader, if he's trying to implement these kind of concepts, is if he leaves the situation, leaves the area, says he gives a mission and this mission takes 3 weeks, and he comes back 2 weeks later and everything's on track and everything's done properly, then as a leader, you're giving that motivational behavior that you want to see people accomplish a mission because they want to.
Exactly, and that is intrinsic motivation. They're doing it because this is not only their job, but because they feel accomplished by doing this job and doing it well. And that's a fulfillment, and that is force development. You're developing a force. As we move each of us through our careers and each position that we have in our career, that allows us to develop ourselves and those around us to become better people, better airmen, better soldiers, better officers, better sergeants. Each one of those people, as we move through our career, improves, and we learn from mistakes, and we learn from the different aspects of our lives. Eventually, it is to the point where it is intrinsic motivation for us to continue to learn and grow and contribute, because that is what we feed on. And so it's important for people to look not only to their leadership for these things, but also to look to themselves. How are you working to develop yourself? How are you working to improve the overall force in those around you? So leadership series like this is incredibly important for us to share our concepts and ideas and talking about what makes people move. Now, some of the things that don't make people move and make them static is things like a concept that I call the gulf of incompetence. And the gulf of incompetence is a really simple idea in that people don't want to be viewed or seen as being incompetent in what they're doing. But yet we're all facing new situations, novel situations that we've never seen before. Because that is our job. In fact, it's our job to be dynamic in those situations and figure out how to succeed in them. But because we have this fear of incompetence, we're like, well, I don't want to go there, and I don't want to take on this new task because I might fail, and somebody might see me fail. And we're supposed to be seen as, completely correct and right and always on target. And yet, at some point, you have to learn to be on target. You have to learn about the different aspects of leadership, just like you have to learn how to use a pistol or how to use a computer. When you first start out that first day, there's a big gulf of incompetence that you have to go through. But we come through then, we come out the other side, and we come out at a higher level because now we know more, and we can apply that knowledge to the additional things in leadership or any other task at hand.
Okay, roger that. That's what a big concept I always learned as a young man was FAIL stands for first attempt in learning.
Excellent. I like that. I think I might have to file serial numbers off that and use it
Right,
myself.
that was a good one for me. So we talked about the hierarchy, we talked about the definition. So now let's talk about military to civilian sector. You are MD, meaning that you're not AGR status or full-time status. So in your civilian world, in your civilian job, how does these concepts like motivational behavior work for you, and how have you seen it be successful?
Well, let me address that by telling a short story. I was asked this question at my civilian job one time. It was more of a statement than a question, and they said, it must be so much easier in the military as an officer because you can just order people what to do. And I looked at them kind of funny and said, if I have to order people to do things, I have already failed. It's important to realize that building intrinsic motivation, you need to find out why people would want to do the things that need to be done. And that's different for each person, and that's why a leader has to be dynamic, and a leader has to understand the people that they work with and try to figure out what motivates them, and why would they want to, and how they would move further. Well, it isn't any different on the civilian side. You can still tell people what to do, and if they're effectively are orders because you hold the power of a job over their heads. But the reality is that's not what you want to do with people. You want them to be able to work with you with heart and soul and putting what they want into it because their basic needs are taken care of. Their food, shelter, the money, all those things are set aside. That stuff is not the important part anymore, but the self-actualization, what they contribute, the ability to point to something and say, I did that and I'm proud of it. Those are the things that ultimately motivate people across any organizational spectrum. And certainly we can drive people, but it's better to lead people. And so in the civilian sector as well, and I lead an organization that's worldwide. I have people in 5 different countries right now. And I have to do all of that through video conferences or telephone calls. So I don't have the ability to stand over the top of somebody and tell them what to do. I need to find out what makes them tick. Why would they want to? Now, certainly we've got those first few levels taken care of because they're on the job.
Roger.
But how do I actually get the best out of them? Well, that's figuring out why they would want to, why they would care, and why they would be here. And if you don't figure those things out, you're not leading.
Okay, and that ties into knowing your people as well. That's I say one of the bigger factors that we have to learn, and I think the Guard has a huge upper hand in the military section for that because Guard people have known each other for years. When I was in recruiting, some of those recruiters worked together for 10, 12 years. So you do definitely get to know those people, and I think as a leader, anytime you get a brand new soldier, the first thing I always do is I like to break bread. I take them to lunch. I try to get to know them. What do you do for fun? What do you do for hobbies? I don't care about work right now. I care about you. And I can start getting to know you on a detailed-oriented level. I can understand your personality type. Then I can understand your motivators. And I find those keys on how I really get that person to tick. And then it brings in that whole community aspect as well, to where they feel part of the team, and that motivates them as well.
Absolutely.
Well,
and so that's very similar to as a commander. I would need to sit down at certain intervals and interview people and talk to them about their job, their enjoyment of the job, what aspects of the job they like, what's their future, what's their plan for the future. And that was always the most enjoyable time for me as a commander, was being able to have those one-on-one conversations and get to know people and what motivated them and why they would want to. And also to assist them with experiences that I've had and experiences that I've heard of other people having. Things that I shared fairly frequently were things that you need to write down your goals, and then you need to tell somebody important that to you what those goals are, because that's a way of hacking your own brain into doing things. And looking at the motivational theory behind that is that we often know what we should be doing. We even have a lot of ideas about what we would like to do, but we have difficulty as individuals even to motivate ourselves to do some of those things. So we have to hack our brain and figuring out how to do them. And one of the ways is you write it down, you journal it, you log it. And this actually gives you the opportunity to review it, and you go back over again, oh yeah, I should have done that today, so we'll be working on that one next. And then also by sharing it with someone else that's important to you, you instill into yourself this idea that, well, I don't want to fail them. I told them I was going to do this. And it's important that I don't fail this person. So that's where you're learning how to motivate yourself. Intrinsically motivating yourself, it becomes a cyclical loop within yourself to gain further and further down the road towards your goals, whatever those goals may be. And they can be organizational goals, they can be individual goals, they can be family goals. All of those things help you to be a more successful individual.
Roger that. Okay, thank you, sir. I think that's a very deep root of understanding those things, and a lot of young leaders might not understand some of those big picture ideas, but if we break it down to refine it to understanding your person, understanding their motivating factors, understanding that they're not going to do anything unless they are actually taken care of first, financially, family-wise, things of those concepts, right? And then really tying it all back to leadership, that dynamic leadership is being individual with people.
Individual with people. And to remember that also with an individual, and we frequently stumble across this as an individual and organizations too, is perfect can often be a goal that we set out for ourselves and for others. And perfection is that always moving over the horizon to that next level, and we never quite get to perfect. What we should be shooting for in ourselves and day to day is, are we better than we were yesterday? Are our organizations better than they were yesterday? And it's the progress, and being able to show that progress is important, not only for yourself, but for the organization and for the organization's leadership as well, because we want to move towards the goals that we set. And again, we write down our goals so that we know where we're tracking to. Each one of these things is a step, a tool, a method of getting us to that ultimate goal of intrinsic motivation for success for ourselves and our fellow airmen and soldiers.
Okay, all right, sir, that sounds pretty good. I appreciate your time today. It sounds like we covered a lot of really good information. For the video that we will have posted, I know that some of your airmen might actually look out for you as mentorship, so I appreciate your time in helping us build this stuff and really just sharing your knowledge with the force.
Thank you very much. It's actually that mentorship and conversations that I appreciate the most about being in the military and working in the Air National Guard.
Roger that, sir. Thank you.